हेलो फ्रेंड्स, केजी क्लासेस में आपका स्वागत है। आज हम आपको रॉबर्ट ब्राउनिंग 1812 टू 1889 एक्सप्लेनेशन के बारे में बताएंगे। फर्स्ट है फियर डेथ से लेकर मस्ट गो, लाइन 1 to 8। दीज लाइन्स विच आर एन एक्सट्रैक्ट फ्रॉम रॉबर्ट ब्राउनिंग फेमस पोएम प्रोस्पाइस रिवील हिज ऑप्टिमिज्म एंड फिलॉसफी। द पोएम वाज occasioned by the death of Mrs. Browning. The poet was not at all nervous after this episode. He is sure to meet her in heaven and hence all fears about that are meaningless. The poet is not at all afraid of death. All the symptoms of death fail to create the feeling of limpidity in him. His thought may be cogged as the result of approaching death. In his eyesight may also fail to recognize everybody, yet he is ready to face death quite bravely. His limbs may become cold as a result of coming death. He may suffer from heavy breathing, but all these symptoms are useless for him. They only tell him that death is imminent, but they cannot make him timid. Weak eyesight, heavy breathing, and coldness leave him unaffected. Death may assume all wildness and ferocity and may appear in a concrete form before a person. Yet the bold man should continue his journey of life. He should not give up action in the wake of approaching death. Why should one leave one's work with the thought of that? सेकेंड एक्सप्लेनेशन है आई वुड से लेकर एन कोल्ड तक, लाइन 15 to 20। रॉबर्ट ब्राउनिंग द पोएट इज prepared to face death quite bravely. He has been a fighter throughout his life. Let him fight one more battle, which would be the last and the best. The poet does not like to avoid the horrors of death by covering his eyes with a piece of cloth. He does not like to keep himself in check. Further, he cannot surrender before death. What is the sense in dying either crippled or blind? Why should he lead a miserable life? He is bold enough to face death in its ugliest form. He will behave as bravely as his ancestors, who laid down their lives quite gladly. He is happy in sharing the shocks and responsibilities of life. If he did not suffer greatly in the past, if darkness and coldness were not his lot in the past, let death realize the arrears from the poet. He will face all agonies and will meet death boldly in a moment. नेक्स्ट एक्सप्लेनेशन है फोर सडन से लेकर द रेस्ट तक, लाइन्स 21 to 28, वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट है। The strong man should not fear death. He should face it like his ancestor. Moreover, why should he be afraid of death when it opens the gates of heaven? The brave person can convert the worst thing into the best one. On account of his bravery, hours of misfortune are covered in no time. Suffering cannot stay before him. Even death is not a matter of sorrow for him. It is welcome as it opens the gates of heaven. After death, elements are furious with anger. The ghostly sounds are heard. The shouts produce wild sound. Then these elements begin to disappear and change their shapes. They are once again joined together for a novel creation. Destructive elements then undergo change. In place of suffering, a person realizes peace. His body is free from tortures after death. There is his serenity of soul, a kind of joy is realized. The poet is happy that after his death he will go to heaven where his life is. He will embrace her warmly. This is his positive position after death. Let him have full faith in God. Long answer type question. Question first. Write a note on critical appreciation of the poem My Last Duchess. Answer. Heading a dramatic monologue. My Last Duchess is one of the most famous poems of Browning. It reveals his philosophy and his poetic craftsmanship to the full. It also shows his mastery of the dramatic monologue for which he is so famous in English literature. Phelps regards it as one of the finest dramatic monologues not only of Browning but in the whole range of English literature. John Bryson remarks the outstanding quality of this short monologue is the tenseness and economy with which the dramatic situation is handled. It displays Browning's mastery of irony and understatements. It also demonstrates his remarkable historical imagination, his power of projecting himself into the mood and characters of a past age. The speaker is the Duke of Ferrara, an important city of Italy. It was an important cultural center during the Renaissance. Whether the character of the Duke in the monologue is based on some actual person of history or not, there can be no denying the fact that in this monologue the poet has captured the very spirit of Renaissance Italy. Its intrigue, its sensuality, its greed, as well as its cultural and artistic activity. Browning's monologues grow out of some crisis or critical situation in the life of the principal figure. The embody of reaction of that figure to the particular situation placed in such a situation, the chief figure, the speaker of the monologue, indulge in self-analysis and self-introspection, and in this way his soul is laid bare in the poem. This applies fully to this monologue too. It gives an analysis of the character of the Duke and his last Duchess, and the messenger of the neighboring count forms the listeners and the interlocutor. Heading the theme. The Duke of Ferrara is a powerful, proud and hard-hearted Italian duke. He is widowed. He intends to marry a second time. The messenger of a powerful count of the duke's neighborhood comes to the duke's palace to negotiate with him the marriage of the count's daughter. The duke takes him round his picture gallery and shows to him the portrait of his last duchess. The portrait is lifelike and realistic, and the duke, who is great lover of fine arts and justly proud of it. The duke points to particular portrait to the messenger and tells him that he alone uncovers the picture and nobody else is allowed to do so. At this point, the duke notices an inquiring look in the eyes of the messenger and at once understands that he wants to know the cause of the deep, passionate look in the eyes of the duchess and proceeds to satisfy his curiosity. The duke tells the inquiring messenger that the deep passion in the eyes of the duchess does not result from any sex intrigue or guilty love. He did not give her any occasion to be unfaithful to him. Even the portrait on the wall was done not by an ordinary artist but by a monk and he was allowed only one day to do it. He did not allow the monk any longer time, for he did not want to provide them any occasion for intimacy. This shows that the Duke is a jealous tyrant, and the poor Duchess could not have enjoyed any freedom of movement as the wife of such a man. The Duke further tells the messenger that his last Duchess had a childish nature. She was pleased with trifles, thanked others for even the slightest service they happened to render to her, and had no sense of dignity and decorum. For example, the faint blush of joy on her cheek and neck was not caused by the presence of her husband alone. If the painter happened to mention that her cloak covered her wrist too much, or that paint could cover hope to capture the light pink glow on her throat, she would take such change remarks as compliment and blush with pleasure. She had a childish heart, and was pleased too easily by such trifles as the gift of a branch laden with cherries, the beautiful sunset, or the mule presented to her by some one for her rides round the terrace. She would blush with pleasure at such trifles, just as she would blush at some costly ornament presented by him. She was the wife of a duke who belonged to an ancient family, 900 years old, but she considered even this gift of his at par with the trivial services rendered to her by others. The Duchess, in the opinion of the Duke, had no discrimination, no sense of dignity and decorum. She smiled at everybody without any distinction. She thanked everybody in the same way. He expected better sense from his wife. He did not correct her, for even to notice such frivolity would have meant loss of dignity, and did not suffer this loss. Besides, she would have argued and discussed with him instead of listening to his advice. Her habit of smiling continued to grow till it became intolerable to him. At last he gave order that her smiles be stopped, and then all smiles stopped together. Most probably the Duchess was murdered at the command of her brutal and hard-hearted husband. Heading A, his craftsmanship. The poem is rich in characterization. It is a kind of character study of the Duke and his Duchess. The tyranny, the pride and self-conceit, the hard-heartedness, the dictatorial attitude and greed of the Duke has been thrown into sharp contrast to the genial and good nature of the Duchess. The Duchess is a frank-hearted, charming girl with a genial disposition and zest for life, but all her expression of delight and her frank innocence, uncorrupted by the ways of the world, received only a cold reception at the hands of her husband. Critics have found autobiographical reference in the poem. They believe that the life of Browning's wife Elizabeth Barrett was just like that of the Duchess at her father's house. Lewis S. Friedlander argues that the Duke referred to is Duke Alfonso II of Ferrara, but Lionel Stevenson argues that Browning's Duke is composed of several members of the state family, including both Duke Alfonso and his father Ercole II, and possibly Duke Nicholas III fra Pandolf Claus of Innsbruck is an imaginary artist. Nevertheless, the Duke and the Duchess are delineated in masterly fashion. Into these portraits have gone a remarkable insight, a keenness of portraiture, brevity and selection. Adding his style. The style of the monologue is dense and epigrammatic. The line "all smiles stopped together" is a concentrated expression of a whole life's tragedy. But despite this density and concentration, the poem is lucid and clear. It is entirely free from the visual fault of Browning. The poem is written in heroic couplet, but as the sense runs on from one line to another, the readers are hardly conscious of the rhymes. Thanks, best of luck.